So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about the South Africa variant of the coronavirus, maybe the Kent one, depending on if it's relevant in the articles. I did see it mentioned a few times, but I think the South Africa one is the scarier one. So, we know that SAGE, the scientific advice, I can't remember what it stands for. They're basically the nerds who basically inform the government about stuff. Basically, they told the government that you have to do mandatory quarantines as well as have negative testing, or you do full on travel bans. And the government were like, yeah, nah, hard pass, bro. And so here we have Sage Warn number 10 over mutant virus. Weeks ago, 80,000 people tested positive for the South African variant after government ignored advice to close borders. And we know that this was the variant that was far more infectious and spread far more easily into the public. And that was one of the reasons why the government said, well, we have a new variant, it's not our fault, don't blame us. When it was their fault, because they allow travel from these places. Also, the fact that you can travel from South Africa to another country and then into the UK, which the government still haven't accounted for. And Boris Johnson's like, yeah, you shouldn't be able to do that. It's like, you can do anything, like, nah, someone else will deal with it. So, you know, it's just bizarre. You know, Sage warned them. The government are like, yo, Nostradamus, calm down. Then, you know, the government are like, oh, there's nothing we could have done, we didn't know. And then Sage are like, we told you. And the government's like, shut up, nerds. So what more can you say, really? You know, we go to this article, Sage Warn number 10 over South African COVID variants weeks ago. So this article from the 2nd, but obviously we know that it takes time for the information to actually get out. So scientists have already warned the government that only mandatory hotel quarantine for all travellers would prevent new coronavirus strains from arriving in the country before it emerged that the South African variant was spreading in the UK. And so mandatory quarantining is something the UK is going to do, but only for specific countries, when it has to do it for everyone. That's the only way they can do it, and the hotel sector's on its knees, so they'll happily accept these people. But the only question you have to ask is, how do you transport people from airports to hotels? That's the only issue that I can see. So the Times, so Boris Johnson announced limited hotel quarantines from only the 30 high-risk countries. The Times can disclose, however, that Downing Street had been advised by Sage a week earlier that geographically targeted travel bans would not be enough to stop the arrival of new strains, and that's in part due to the fact that people can travel from one country to another into the UK. The scientists said that the only way to get close to stopping them was by closing the borders completely or introducing mandatory quarantine measures for everyone entering Britain. Mandatory quarantining is something that Australia have done to great success. I'm not sure if Japan have done it, but whatever Japan have done has led to their great success, and New Zealand, you know, great success. The SAGE advice said it would probably be ineffective to close the borders, which was the same advice that we got from the World Health Organization. So when you can see a consensus like this, you know that you should start listening. But the government are like, yeah, sorry, Nostradamus. We can obviously look back in hindsight with the information now, but we didn't have that information at the time. We always base our decisions on the best scientific and medical advice that we could get in this country. But they did tell you, so dingus. She would not be drawn on when mandatory hotel quarantining would be introduced. My voice is really gravelly right now. Sorry about that. She told the Times Radio, that's not much better. She told the Times Radio that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, would confirm details of the policy next week. The government is working to achieve this policy and implement it as quickly as possible. So, you know, they haven't sorted out the limited quarantining yet, which is embarrassing because they've had like almost a year to do this. Ministers yesterday argued that a blanket approach to hotel quarantining would not work and could go on indefinitely. I mean, other countries have managed to do this. You have to start limiting travel from people from abroad and say the only people that can come here are people that are British citizens or have some sort of extremely important work that they cannot do over the phone. You know, you're talking like science related stuff, because that's the only way you can limit this. People should not be coming into this country unless you have a family member who is, you know, going to pass away soon, or some sort of absolute emergency. There should be no reason for people to be freely entering this country right now. So much for controlling our borders. Robert Courts, a transport minister, told the Commons, "No one should be fooled that a blanket approach, as we are having urged upon us today, would work. We have to look at what it would achieve." I mean, it would work. Look at, quote, New Zealand, Australia. Bruh. We have only to look at the United States, which closed its borders entirely in the early stages of the crisis and now has one of the worst pandemic experiences. I mean, that's a stupid argument to make, purely because the USA's response to COVID-19 was a joke. It's worse than ours. So this comparison he's making here is fraudulent. Andrew Hayward, a professor of infectious diseases and epidemiology at University College London and a scientific advisor to the government, said that new strains would enter the country regardless of border controls. I disagree with that, because we have seen other countries deal with this stuff properly. I guess you could argue that if someone from, say, South Africa did come into the UK and then mandatory quarantined, that would be letting the virus into the country, yes. But it would stop it from spreading. He told Sky News the nature of this virus is that it will continue to mutate, as do all viruses, and new strains will emerge. They will emerge in many different countries in the world at different times, and you won't notice that they are spreading until such time as they are quite widespread. The real challenge here is that, well, you can think about completely shutting the borders and having quarantines, but what's the end game in that? Is that something that you're going to do forever? Because it looks like these strains may continue. This is absolute rubbish from this dude here, because we've seen other countries actually do this indefinitely, and yes, it has worked. So this guy, I don't want to question his credentials, but I don't think he's the guy you want to be listening to, because his advice doesn't make sense given that other countries have done this successfully. So I'm gonna say, see you later, mate. We go on. This South Africa variant is that bad that the government are saying think twice if you live in an area with the new variant, and they are also sending more testing kits and facilities to these areas in order to deal with it, which tells you that it's scary. Some of these numbers are out of date. What we can tell is some of the people who have the new variant have no connection to travel to South Africa, so that means it's already within communities. That means the horse is bolted, it's completely gone. Is out of sight at this point. You've got you've got this new variant in Birmingham as well, with people who have no link to this, to South Africa, no link to travel. So beyond just these postcodes here, in mainly London and the southeast. You got Warsaw there, but you've got Birmingham as well, as a major place. The UK finds more coronavirus, concerning, and this is the key issue as to why. I'm doing this video. It's not just because the South Africa variant is more contagious. That's something I've talked about in the past, but it's also the fact is that the vaccine may not be as effective against it. Tests have shown that the mutation called E484K, which is super catchy, that is already seen in the South African variant. Although this change may reduce vaccine effectiveness, the current ones should work, experts say, and because we're allowing these different variants to come into the UK, what that means is that you have allowed time for not only just more variants to come in to the UK, but also this new variant to be less effective against the vaccine, which is the only thing the British government are gambling on to get us out of this pandemic. Not to mention the fact that if they follow this single dose vaccine strategy, this the coronavirus may find a way to mutate and also get bypass the vaccines as well, because we keep allowing this thing to stay in the wild and keep it spreading to different people and allowing it to mutate. We go to one of our last articles here, which is Matt Hancock saying stay at home if you're in the areas with the new variant, and also this article here from the Japan Times. A fast-spreading coronavirus variant first observed in the United Kingdom has gained a new mutation that could possibly make it harder to control with the vaccine. So this is not about the this is not in the South Africa variant. I think it's very confusing. But basically, these new variants. The point of this video and this article is that these new variants may have less, may be not as affected by the vaccines as the original strains. The variant known as B117 first came to light in December. Researchers determined that it had rapidly become more common across the United Kingdom in just a couple of months. Experiments in test tubes suggest that some of its mutations allow the coronavirus to hold on to cells more tightly. Since B117's discovery in the United Kingdom, the variant has reported in 72 other countries, the UK being a hub for some of those countries for this new strain to go into. In its latest analysis, Public Health England estimate that the new variant's rate of infectiousness is 25% to 40% higher than that of other forms of coronavirus. Some preliminary evidence said that it may also cause more deaths, which makes a lot of sense. Several lines of evidence suggest that vaccines will work against B117. On Thursday, vaccine maker Novavax announced that the British trial found no evidence that B117 could evade the vaccine's defences, which is great news. But in South Africa, where a variant called B13351 has surged to dominance, the Novavax and Johnson & Johnson vaccines have been less effective in trials. So what we can gather from this is the UK variant may not be as big an issue to vaccines, but the South Africa variant may be an issue for vaccines. So Public Health England said that the worrisome mutation known as B484K appears to have arisen more than once in B117 coronavirus variants in the United Kingdom. 2 variants in Brazil have also been discovered to have independently gained the same mutation. So what we can see is that these new variants are starting to gain they're starting to make the vaccines less effective, and that is terrifying, because that means that these vaccines that they've taken a year to work on may not be as effective as we first hoped, and also may not work, and may mean that we may be having further problems down the line, because countries decided that instead of following a zero COVID tolerance policy, or as Makarov would say, no COVID strategy, we've decided to play what can the NHS deal with. If the NHS can deal with it, then it's fine, and that strategy is gonna lead to more problems, more variants, and other things like that. Instead of doing what Australia and New Zealand and these countries did, Japan, testing people at airports, doing mandatory quarantines, ensuring that these things could not spread. Instead of doing that, we decided to play the stupid way, which is maybe lockdown, maybe not, ignore the science, ignore the experts, ignore the nerds, and do whatever we want in half measures. Because we followed the strategy of half measures, what that means is we're gonna essentially cause more problems for this country. I can't tell you how good or bad South Africa's response to the coronavirus pandemic has been, but I can tell you the UK has been a shambles, and we are facing new variants because of that. So shouts out to you, Bojo the Wonder Clown. You may have got this vaccine thing right, but you may have caused more problems because of your other policies. Shouts out to you, Dido Harding, as well, another one who did not know the coronavirus could mutate. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.